There is something about language when we're talking about how do we communicate within our relationships.
How do you start off relationships, new relationships from a place of integrity?
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Queer Relationships, Queer Joy.
Here we are,
Here we are.
back again.
Oh, you know that the song that just came into my mind, it's a generation. Here we go, back again. We're your hosts. I am Keely C. Helmick,
And I'm Melissa DeSegurant.
and it's just the two of us today. After a nice interview, we have a couple weeks with just us, and then get back on the interview train with some other great guests. So, updates, Melissa.
Let's do our full intros for anyone new so that they know who is talking at them.
Melissa, keep me in line. I always need someone to keep me in line because I'll just go all over the place. Well, my name is Keely C. Helmick. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I am the owner of Connective Therapy Collective. I'm also a certified sex therapist. I am a white, queer, non-binary femme. Currently, right now, dating somewhat non-monogamously and just hanging out, feeling the February in Portland, Oregon.
And I'm Melissa DeSegura. I'm licensed as a marriage and family therapist and professional counselor working at Connective Therapy Collective. I am white, I am able-bodied, I am bisexual, I'm polyamorous, and I'm gender fluid. I use she and they pronouns.
Awesome. That was fast.
That was. We're getting there. We just have to remember to do it. That's all.
I feel like there's something I want to mention, and maybe we should have recorded something, and maybe we will. But I just want to mention on the episode before this when we talk about pain and chronic pain and sex. And I feel like we didn't. I wanted to give more of a shout out to Touch Me Not Tops and this combination of how people can find their, like, no matter where they're at in their bodies and gender, sexuality, all these pieces. Like, I wanted to give some kudos to, like, people who express their sexuality. And I don't know, I just, after the episode, after we recorded it, I wanted, like, just mention Touch Me Not Tops as well.
Get a shout out.
Yeah, we were claiming pillow princesses. Let's talk about our, Touch Me Not Tops. Back in the day, they were called Stone Butch Blues, like Stone Butches, or the book Stone Butch Blues or Stone Butches. So I don't know, and that puts me old school style. But I will say, I think that's the lingo. And if there's another lingo, someone tell me. But I was thinking a lot about the Touch Me Not Tops.
Love that. That's what happens. We'll record an episode and then go, wait, oh man, we didn't talk about this, which is why we're going to keep talking about it all. Of course.
Well, it's interesting. I think this is a generational thing with sex. What I'm hearing is why do we have to categorize? And this, do I want to say shaming or just saying, hey, not really feeling the categorizations of like top, bottom, switch, or giving, receiving, these terms people just aren't jiving with.
Yeah, right.
And I find it interesting. It seems to fall in line with these thoughts of, whether or not we have labels for ourselves, and are they helpful? Are they restrictive?
Yes, and both. It's both. And I think even the best label will not necessarily stand the test of time. Language changes, and that's part of the creativity of it. I think when we get a little too ingrained in like, no, this is what this means, and then we start using that to categorize other people, is where a lot of problems happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I've said this before, but I am in the camp. I always want more language to explain something. And whereas there's other folks who talk about not having to describe something, just being human, being who we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how does that translate to the dating apps? By the way, I mean, I know we talk about the dating apps a lot. That's not what this episode is about today. But if we don't have this language, I don't know. Do you want to argue the other side, Melissa, about not having labels and not using these terms anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I do feel like any language is inherently limiting. That by nature, it is defining something, right? And that's sort of the point of it. But I think when you forget that it is limiting inherently, and then again, you get glued to labels and you don't give yourself fluidity to try out other words or try not using words for a while and see how that helps you grow. Like that to me is the point. It's allowing flexibility and fluidity.
Can we have the language and labels and still allow for flexibility within that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also valid if people don't want to have the language and labels. I think we just don't
Yeah.
get to control how other people use or don't use language.
Yeah. And, I will say that I've heard this from more than one person where someone might, in general, identify a certain way, but then with different people will be different sexually. And
Mhm.
so, sometimes someone who identifies as a top may be more of a switch with a certain person.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I just, again, with language, we get so fixed on these definitions, and I've seen it be used to label people in ways that they're not comfortable with. And I'm like very not okay with that, And here's just an example. This hasn't happened to me, but it could be said. I think from a technical definition standpoint, the way most people understand the word pansexual would apply to me. However, that word has no meaning to me at all. It has no history with me. It doesn't feel good for me to say. It doesn't make sense to how I experience my own attraction, even though by definition, you could argue that is a label that I quote unquote should use. But again, I'm a therapist. I don't believe in should statements, you
Don't
know?
shit on
So
yourself.
yeah. So, I mean, quite frankly, I don't give a fuck if that's like the word that makes sense to people. For me, that's not a word that I choose. And I've heard somebody before, actually, this did come from an interview on Elena Joy's YouTube. And I'm trying to remember, I'll have to add in later if I can remember who she was interviewing. But the conversation was around gender, and they were talking about even pronouns. And to your point, how people will use different language or different pronouns in this scenario with different people. And they were talking about it like nicknames. Like there are some people who call me Melissa and there's some people who call me Mel. But if you call me Mel and you're not one of the people who's allowed to use that name, I'm going to look at you funny. Like that's not a name that everyone is allowed to use,
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
would say, yes, I am Mel, right? By definition, that is a nickname that is active in my friends use it, but it's not okay for someone to decide to use that with me, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, that makes total sense. My kids call me mom still or mother, but other people, when I hear people say, like, my child's name's mother, I'm like, "Ooh," like, I get kinda cringy, but the label of, like, mother and auntie with my nibblings and with my children work for me. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I can definitely jive with that and how that fits with my gender. And, yeah, we get to reclaim names or we get to talk about how we want to use those words.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think as we're having this conversation too, part of my current frustration with like the need to overuse language or use a lot of language for me right now is it goes against like this trying to pin down and define goes against my energy right now, which is much more expansive and creative and defying definition. And like that's what I'm embodying right now in my life. And so that's why I say, like, we don't get to choose whether other people are like really into labels or not. We don't know what's right for them in the particular moment of their life they're in. Sometimes it is, I need definition. I need to feel pinned down. I need to feel like I understand or that I fit in somewhere. That's valid. It's just not where I'm at right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I do think that on this topic, thinking about generationally more and more, I'm hearing folks like high schoolers, people in college, and then early 20s, a lot more just saying any pronouns, for instance.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that's what everyone, this is very much Portland, Oregon, very much Pacific Northwest queers, but seems to be more of what's catching on, which fits in with this less labeling or more fluidity, like you're saying. And I wonder, with this conversation, I do think it lends itself to our topic that we wanted to talk about today, because there is something about language when we're talking about how we talk about our relationship and how do we communicate within our relationships. And Melissa, you use the term relationship integrity. I don't know if you have a different definition. When I think about the word integrity, the basic definition I work with is what you are doing when no one else is looking, going
Mm-hmm.
on when no one else is looking.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the conversation does have to start with, as we talk about definitions, how do you define integrity? What does that mean? And actually, if you like just Google it, everyone's going to have a slightly different definition. So I do think like there's your first takeaway of a talking point with new partners is like, hey, what does integrity mean to you? How do you show integrity in relationships? Like, let's define this together.
Oh, of course, if you look at values and on that, any kind of business, you want to be a person that leads with integrity, or that's
Mhm.
a very common word.
Yeah,
And few people actually have a true definition for that. What is your
right.
definition, Melissa? What are you looking up
You
online right?
know, I don't have just one, but when I think about relationship integrity, for me, the way I can be in integrity or show integrity in relationships is by saying what I mean and doing what I say when things are congruent, when what I say and what I do are matching up. I think another word you can use is ethical. Like, I would argue that when we're talking about ethical non monogamy, we're talking about integrity versus other kinds of non monogamy that are not ethical. So I think those are big parts of it. I think honesty, but with that, this is where it also comes into the relationship with self, because honesty about feelings, for example, requires us to know for ourselves what is happening in our internal landscape and what we are feeling to be able to communicate that in any sort of an honest way. So it's a big term. It's really broad, but I think it's important because we've done a good job of getting, I guess, ticky-tacky about like the smaller relationship things. Like we've referenced things like using I statements, taking breaks, all these different tools. But what I'm seeing with my clients is they're like trying to track all of these tools simultaneously while starting new relationships. And it feels like doing a million things at once. So sometimes backing up and having a word like integrity, almost as your mantra, is like that can help orient like your decision making.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of like when you're starting out with your values, you're starting out with your mission statement. Like if
Yeah.
you're introducing yourself to somebody.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Cardinal, your behind the scenes buddy. Episode 69 is coming up, and I want to invite you to add your queer joy to the show. Leave us a voice message at 503-660-4409 with anything that's brought you queer joy recently. Remain anonymous or share your name, totally up to you. I can't wait to hear your joys. Numbers in the episode description. All right, back to the show.
So this aligns, or this makes me think about other pieces we've talked about when we're talking about boundaries, when we're talking about how much we choose to tell somebody. And it does really, that honesty piece really gets into wordplay about what is the truth. How honest is someone being? Are we respecting or thinking about what someone else really wants to hear, wants to know about? And really, like you said, being honest with yourself. What is it? What is honesty to you? What is integrity to you? And how do you want to communicate that with a partner or with people in your life?
Right. And how do you start off new relationships from a place of integrity? I think that can be a valuable question. And sometimes that's the legitimate format of the relationship. Some of the questions and conversations I've been exposed to recently is about in situations where it's a monogamous structure, but someone is cheating. Do you have sex with someone who is married, for example, and their partner doesn't know, right? And as a clinician, if I'm faced with that, I do not get to promote my morals and force my ethics on someone else. That's part of the ethics of being a therapist. I don't get to say what other people do, and I'm not going to sit there and shame people for doing something that I don't personally agree with. What I will say in this format, and I have said this in different words to clients, is be aware of the relationship you're in. And if this is a relationship that's founded on dishonesty and lying, that's not a relationship that's founded on integrity. Even if it feels like, but they connect with me and we really just, and this is a person who is lying to a person they've made a commitment with. That's the foundation for this relationship. It's based on a lie, right? That, again, we can pass judgment or not on that. But what we can say is that's a breeding ground for future issues of trust, right? It's just be aware of how those dynamics can then impact the longevity of your relationship together.
Yeah, and engaging with somebody non-monogamously, non-consensual non-monogamy, because that's another term we use. I mean, the word cheating, and again, speaking of language, there's so many labels that can come into play around that. And at the end of the day, it's about being really honest with yourself. And like you said, okay, this is a relationship dynamic that I'm choosing to engage in.
Right. Exactly. Just be aware,
Yeah. And I will say, the last statistic that I had heard was, I don't know, like 70% of people have had non-consensual non-monogamy or cheating. I think the term in the research, in the statistics, it was the term, have you ever cheated on a partner? Very, very monogamous, very monogamous terminology. And so, there's things that we as humans do. And so that's one example of looking at what you're doing clearly and making choices. And the other thing we're looking or talking about within this dynamic, framing relationship integrity, starting from the beginning can be a little confusing because we're looking at how much do you want to talk about yourself? How much do you want to reveal about yourself? What is considered ethical? What is something someone deserves to know or should know? And that's going to differ for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen people get trapped in that. Am I just supposed to tell someone everything? And like, no, that's not the takeaway. Again, honesty doesn't mean every single thing you ever thought or felt. Sometimes it's easier to look at it the opposite way. Are you saying things that are untrue? And if you're talking about integrity in relationships, think about in that the Evelyn Stars acronym, the relationship intentions. Are you telling someone you're available for something that you're not available for? Are you saying something untrue? We can talk about integrity with dating profiles. Does your dating profile match what you're offering? Are you telling somebody you're available for? Oh my God, I've seen this with unicorn hunting, right? Especially as a bisexual person. I sit there and get matched with some cute girl, and all of a sudden, like a day later, it's like, oh, actually, I'm looking for me and my partner. Okay, well, that's not the conversation. That's not what's on your profile. That, to me, that's an example of somebody not acting with integrity.
Yeah. And if what you're looking for, obviously, like we're saying, it can change. We just said, there's a fluidity within it. And how much do you know what you're actually looking for? Or does it match?
Yeah. I'm the person, and I we use ourselves as examples, I think, on the podcast. I hesitate sometimes. I don't want it to come across as like, here's the right way, just because this is what works for me. But like for the sake of illustrating this example, I have been on first dates before where they've said, what are you looking for? And I've said, I have to be honest, I don't really know right now.
Yeah.
Here's what's happening in my life. Here's what I'm feeling. Here's what I'm interested in. Here's what I'm afraid of. I don't know what I'm looking for, but what I can, do is I can communicate to you along the way how things are going.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Melissa, is that you have those check-ins, or you can let people know as it comes. Because there is also this pressure. I do think that there is this pressure right now on dating apps or in dating in general to know what you want. Right. And that kind of feels, even with the non-monogamy mindset, it feels kind of monogamous. Like, oh, are you ready to Are you looking to settle down? Are you ready to be in a quote unquote real relationship? What are you looking for? And it is interesting. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of fluidity within what I'm seeing anyway. Maybe it's just my age group that I have. I don't know. But I'm hearing from there's this essence of, okay, wanting to, be an ethical slut right now in a slut phase, just trying things out, wanting to be really casual, or, okay, I'm full on ready to go full relationship. And I'm like, where is the fluidity within that? Where's
in between?
Yeah, where is just dating and just existing and seeing what happens?
Yeah.
So even within this opening of these different options and being more clear, oh, yeah, I'm just in a friends with benefits phase or just wanting to make connections with people. Even within that, it seems really restricted that that there is this challenge to be fluid around it and just see what happens. And within that, it comes back to, like you said, knowing ourselves, and the integrity piece is meeting somebody where they're at. And I think that's one of the biggest skills that I think as a therapist that translates into my connections and interactions with people wherever I'm meeting them is that idea of meeting people where they're at.
And with that, and you've referenced this before, Keely, but that like radical acceptance of where they're at.
Yeah.
To me, that's another piece of integrity of, gosh, God, us people pleasers can get in this trap, where it's, I see where you're at and I know that you can change. And so I don't want to cause any waves now because I want to keep you around, but that, if you've got any of them, maybe you don't have to be a people pleaser, certainly, to be in a relationship thinking someone's going to change or hoping they're going to change. But are you sitting like in a place of integrity if you are, telling someone, I'm meeting you where you're at, I love you the way you are, but really in the back of your mind, you're saying, but you have to change. You have to change to really earn my love. To me, that's not integrity.
No. And so there's that piece that you're saying, there's the idea of someone looking at someone to change. But I think there's another piece of this which can phase into sometimes what we talk about with codependency is this idea of, oh, I'm learning what this person likes and doesn't like.
Right.
And I'm going to shift and just talk about these pieces, or another term that's used quite a bit now is fawn, is
yes.
to act in a way that you think that person wants what they want. And so when they're in these first couple dates or you're meeting somebody and you're learning what they like, what they want, and then you start shifting to please that person.
Yeah.
Yeah. People,
there's the dishonesty there, right?
Yes, that is not integrity with ourselves.
Right.
That isn't. That's a really good way to put it, Melissa. It's in opposition to integrity. It's trying to appear as somebody that you're not.
Right.
To please someone or to gain the attention.
Yeah.
And we know that's not what's going to really produce a long-term relationship.
Right. I think that's a brilliant example too, Keely, because that's one where it gives you the understanding that when we talk about integrity, it does have different feelings, or a different tone to it. Like in that example with that people pleasing or shifting and changing oneself to try and be what we think someone else wants. I don't necessarily have the immediate like, oh, that's a terrible, I don't have a judgment the way, and I'm owning this for myself, that I may have a judgment around the engaging in non-consensual, relationships. So we're not saying that like if somebody's acting out of integrity that like they're a terrible person or that it's, judge them or whatnot. It can happen in like these really appearingly sweet ways of like, for example, like the person who goes, oh, no problem. Sure. Whatever. Sure. Anything you want. No problem. Right. It's like, okay, again, that might be dishonest, but that person might also not be aware. I can't remember who it was we had somebody we interviewed recently. I think it may have been Foster actually, who had talked about when somebody says, oh, I'm up for anything sexually. And it's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. That's not the answer. There's more work to do there. It's okay if you're not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know is the valid answer, but I'm just up for whatever. No, that's not true.
Well, I love I took a BDSM training, BDSM for therapists, and I need to post this person's name because she's awesome. But she said that, and she's also a pro dom. When she has someone come in and she asks, "What do you want?" and they're like, "Oh, whatever you want," she's like, "Out."
Yeah.
That's the
We're done.
no for her. Yeah, she won't engage with them if you don't know what you want. Because think about that. If you can't describe what you actually want, it's not informed. Because there has to be something. And so along this idea of integrity, can there be a conversation with somebody around figuring out what works for the two of you? Is there a middle ground? Can you come to a place where, okay, like I think about, I like going on a hike and someone doesn't like hiking. Are they willing to go on a walk with me? That, you can walk around Mount Tabor where it's flat, or do they not want to be outside at all? If I like to camp, or I don't know why that's an example coming to my mind, but this idea that doesn't really give the other person opportunity to actually get to know you either.
Right.
It's not intentional, but there is actually was one of the things that took me so long to really catch and understand and learn, but that this response, being a people pleaser and saying those phrases like, "Oh, whatever you want," or "I'm open to anything," is actually slightly manipulative.
Right. And it's this covert manipulation.
It's covert, yes, but it's manipulation because you're saying, "Oh, you are changing something to try to get a certain result from someone else." And so you're using this way to be like, "Oh, well, I'm going to do what you want to do so that I can appear this way," versus showing up as yourself, being like, "No, I actually don't like hot dogs. I don't want to go to a hot dog stand." I don't know where these examples are coming from. I don't know.
I'm like wanting to analyze all these examples now. I'm like, these are fun.
Well, I do have it's interesting because there's this great example. We're just talking about non-monogamy and how this plays in. The person I'm dating is having a birthday coming up, and it's like a layered birthday, 3 or 4 different things going on. And the old me, they're going to like some big meat place. And the old me, or like years ago, I would have been like, "Oh yeah, of course I'll go." But I was like, wait a minute. I'm like, no, I don't want to sit just like this bunch of meat in front of me. I mean, it's like big time, like making the meat in front of you. It's just like I'm a mostly vegetarian person. That's just like not my thing. And I was like, "Oh, this is so great." I had an honest conversation with them, and I was like, "Is it cool if I don't go? Like, your partner's going to be there. I can join later, blah, blah, blah." And it was so lovely because I was really honest and upfront with them. And they knew that I probably wouldn't want to go to that.
Yeah.
That felt like integrity to me. And in my body, that's another piece about integrity, is like when it lines up energetically, you can feel that. When someone is people pleasing or holding back parts of themselves, or not using their voice, not really putting themselves out there, that's a lot of where anxiety comes in. We don't always talk about anxiety in that energetic form, where when interactions with other humans.
Yeah.
And we're talking specifically about romantic relationships and dating. This can come up in any relationship. Friendships, if you're always the easygoing one, or like do whatever the other person wants to do.
Yeah. I love that point though, Keely. I think in that last example, it shows that honoring one's boundaries can be a form of acting in integrity, But you're right. It can happen in any sort of relationship. It can happen in, professional relationships. It can happen with friendships. Yeah. But it always comes back to relationship with self to me, because again, we have to know what our needs are, what our boundaries are, what's happening in our internal world when somebody makes a request and we go to react right away rather than pausing, noticing what comes up and then wanting to respond. Those are if we're in that reactive mode in any scenario, likely we could be being dishonest or disingenuous.
Yeah. And It takes a little bit more time. It takes a little bit more communication. But I think that's the piece, that upfront work or that upfront discussions and curiosity. Also, there's a lot more, what's the word I'm trying to say? Maybe patience. I think that in the beginning, when you have the NRE going on, you're like, oh yeah, there's more energy. There's more beginner's mind. There's more curiosity. Like that's one of the things with longer term relationships. I'll talk about people bringing that curiosity back. Well, at the beginning stages of meeting somebody new and dating somebody, there is so much curiosity. And how cool is that to get to share who you are and things you like, preferences, dislikes, really getting to talk about that. And then that's like true informed consent. You're talking about yourself. This other person's talking about themselves. You're learning about each other's desires, goals. Does this align?
Yeah, right.
And not trying to appear to be something. Now, the difference is we can want to show certain parts of ourselves. And are those things true things about ourselves? Or are we just trying to appear a certain way? And I think that's a really fine line. Like, I'm not sure how much we can differentiate that. But that, again, is that integrity piece, like you said.
Totally. Yeah. And you're right, because sometimes other people bring out new parts of ourselves that we didn't know were there, right? That's like the point of being in a relationship with people, So again, it could be like, I don't know. I think that leads into me wanting to really like debunk the idea that any of this conversation is about perfectionism. We're not going to, most likely, we are not going to act like from a place of integrity at all times. We are human. We have triggers, we have wounds, we have needs, we have attachment, we have egos. There's so much stuff at play. But I think this is where really healthy repair work can restore integrity in relationships. And sometimes that's saying, wow, you know what? I was totally trying to impress you, but I fucking hate this movie. Can we turn it off? No, not everyone's going to receive that with like a warm hug, but like if a partner said that to me, I would burst out laughing and be like, thank you for being authentic. That's fucking refreshing. Like, actually, I hate this movie too. I was just watching it because I thought you would like it.
I mean, yeah, I do think, and I'm curious, I feel like this has been an age thing for me. And I've heard so often, and this is kind of like white cis hetero land, but I'm not cis hetero, but the phrase that's tossed around of like being in your 40s and not giving a fuck anymore, or 40s no fucks to give.
Yeah.
And I do feel it. And I don't know, it's hard for me to delineate between COVID stuff and in my 40s, because I turned 40 in 2020 during the thick of the lockdown. And so I will say, though, something does shift. I do feel a shift as I get older. And I do think that's consistent with what a lot of humans will say, getting older and just kind of caring less, but not caring less. It's not holding up the appearance as much.
Right. Care less about the mask that you present to someone when you first meet them.
But it's still, and then there's another side to that, which then you start getting this like scarcity. You're like, oh my God, I'm like getting older and I'm gonna die alone. So I'm not this is not, doesn't come without its own things that pop up. But I do think there's something, there's some middle ground. And like you said, so starting off and being honest, but also like having your own boundaries of not saying, doesn't mean that you tell your whole life story on the first or second date.
Right. Yeah.
There's certain things you may not talk about for quite some time.
Yeah, absolutely. Or ever. There are certain things that may not ever be spoken, and that's okay. This is where, again, I know I'm talking kind of about the energy behind terms, which is a weird concept for some people, perhaps, but there's a difference in the feel of secrecy versus discretion, and there are things that may be true to you that not everyone needs to know, and that's okay. But that may be different than holding a secret, like information that is actually really relevant and important to somebody to be able to consent in the relationship, that's
Yeah.
different, right? That's very different.
Yeah. And the different, do you talk about traumatic events from your childhood? Well, you may want to talk about that if that's something that pops up in relationships or pops up. I have folks talk a lot about different things that come up when they're having sex with somebody. So that's an important thing to talk to someone if you're gonna be sexual with them. STI and STD, disclosing that. I think this is where it's interesting with non-monogamy and dating, and sometimes people dating non-monogamously, but then being more of a monogamous relationship person.
Right.
How do you talk about whether you're sexually active with someone or not? For me, that's a very clear line to me, which then I know, and we've talked about this, it gets squeaky around non-consensual non-monogamy. But how can someone give true informed consent about sex if they're not knowledgeable about you engaging with other people?
Right. Right. Exactly.
Now, what you say about that may be different. Like you may just say, oh, yeah, I'm dating other people. I'm sexual with other people. And it could just be like that. My
Right.
last time I was tested was blank.
Right. And you two can create, or three, or however many in the system, can create the agreements around that. There's not a right or wrong agreement. It's what the system decides. The integrity piece is that everyone gets to be a part of that decision. And it is an
Yeah.
agreement.
Because some people are going to want to be sexually monogamous off the bat. Maybe they get to have the information to then choose what they want to do with that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I got for today. As always, there's much more to talk about. And I will be curious to hear what people think about this relationship integrity and how that ties in with what we talk about and privacy and honestly, some of the past episodes talking about what we communicate to metamors or, what other partners, other people, how much we talk about things.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like this will be the concept we reference a bit as we move forward. It is, admittedly, it's very broad, but I do think it's a core piece of healthy relationships that doesn't get talked about directly.
No, it doesn't. Not in that way with that word integrity.
Yeah. Yeah. And if your head is spinning after today with this concept, I think kind of back to what you initially said, Keely, like start with values. Start with just figuring out what are my top 3 personal values and can I behave and act and make decisions and communicate in ways that are in alignment with those values. That's a really good start into how do I act with integrity.
It's like an emotional chiropractor.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Emotionally aligned.
Yes, exactly. I love it.
All right. Well, speaking of moving from integrity and relationships, we get to talk about queer joy. What has been going on? I do have one. Do you want to start or do you want me to start?
I would love for you to start.
Okay. Well, and we're talking about 40s. Okay. So definitely have so many Aquariuses in my life. I don't know if I've mentioned this before or not on an episode, but I know I've talked to you about it, probably Melissa, and I've been talking to a lot of people. And actually yesterday someone was talking about Aquariuses and they don't get along with Aquariuses, but went to a 40th party and it was the sweetest, queerest, like sober birthday party. And like basically the premise was it was in this house, rented out basement, and there was this screen. It was a hybrid. I mean, how's this for, post 2020, a hybrid birthday. So there are people on Zoom that were like projected and there's people in the room and we all did introductions with pronouns, how we knew the person. And I was like, oh, I know this
Very
person.
involved.
Well, I'm friends with them from Tinder. We are totally not non-sexual for many, many, many months. But when we first started hanging out, it was like with the premise of dating. So I met their partner and it was just so beautiful. And then everyone was part of what the person who's having the birthday, they wanted to have people perform. So you would love this, Melissa. Oh my gosh. So I'm sitting there and I don't know what to expect with the performances. This person full on burlesque, like,
Wow.
and like really good. Like they had their medicine, which is like all referencing like weed, but it was this whole show. And I was like, what? Like, talk about surprise. It's like 5 o'clock in the afternoon in the basement, but it is like everyone's queer. I think there was maybe like out of the like 30 or 40 people there, maybe 5 were cis folk. Super fun, super queer. I really loved that it was no alcohol and still had this underline of like sweetness and sexiness and so fun. So much fun. Major queer joy. So that's where my head was yesterday.
That sounds like some good entertainment.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then people like dancing and lip syncing and yeah, so much stuff. So much stuff.
Amazing. Yeah. Yeah. Well, man, we didn't really do updates, and that's okay because I don't feel like I have a ton of updates necessarily, but I will name it's just been a very heavy several weeks for me. There's been a lot of diagnoses and death and just a lot of grief that just kind of keeps seeming to happen in my extended community. So with that, with winter, everything just where I'm at in this part of the season, I've really gone very quiet, I would say. I've really been off of social media a lot more than I usually have been. I haven't even been streaming shows. I've just needed to be away from screens for the most part. And so the queer joy is like, I guess, my recognition of that and then acting accordingly. I mean, y'all know I like to introvert. And so I've been cooking myself these amazing meals, which is just awesome. I think and part of the queer joy for me there is I have the time to learn how to make myself really delicious stuff. That's not true of my childhood. I was really, really, really busy as a kid. I had 2 parents who both worked full time. And so I had every after school care and activity and extracurriculars you can imagine just to keep me busy. So I never learned how to like make myself delicious food. So it feels like a real privilege and a real joy. And especially when I get to like garnish it with something from the herbs that I grew, like that feels real special, very magical.
Yay.
So, yeah, so that's my core joy. It's just being able to nourish myself and do what feels right for me.
Awesome. Well, y'all know how to find us. Please write in or check out our telephone. Leave a message on the hotline. Not hotline. That's not right. Our telephone. It's not a hotline.
The voicemail.
Right. Leave a message on the voicemail. Ask questions. Share with us your queer joy. And pay attention. Look out. We are going to be having some workshops coming up, both for general public and for therapists. And the next one coming up, we have something in April. If you listen to the episode with Lucy Fielding, they will be here in April to hang out with us folks in Portland, Oregon, doing a couple great workshops, and check it out. Otherwise, yeah, check us out. You know where to find us on Instagram and Facebook and all those social media. And I hope you all have a queer and joyful week.
Thanks for listening to Queer Relationships, Queer Joy, a podcast by the Connective Therapy Collective, hosted by Keely C. Helmick and Melissa DeSegrand, with audio edited by me and Leigh Supapo Bernito. I'm your producer, Cardinal Marking. Intro music is by Bad Snacks. If this episode made you smile or think, tell us about it. If you hated it, tell us about that. Review us on iTunes or Spotify, or send us an email at media@connectivetherapycollective.com. For more queer joy, visit our Instagram at queerrelationshipsqueerjoy or our website www.connectivetherapycollective.com. Love ya. Bye.